Today, on June 6, the world is focused on one of the most important and topical events. According to the UN, it's Russian Language Day. According to Ukrainians and all normal people on the planet, it's the destruction of the Kakhovka Reservoir Dam in southern Ukraine by Russians. According to Kakhovka Hydroelectric, the Kakhovka Hydroelectric power plant cannot be restored. At the moment, water is leaving the reservoir very quickly. People are being urgently evacuated from the southern regions. As a reminder, the Russians have been controlling the dam since the first day of the invasion on February 24, 2022. In the fall of 2022, Ukrainian authorities claimed that Russian troops had completely mined the dam. President Zelensky warned that Russia could blow it up to stop the advance of Ukrainian troops. The explosion threatens to flood up to 80 settlements. The villages of Mykolaiivka, Olhivka, Lvove, Tahinka, Ponyativka, Ivanivka, Tokarivka, Pridniprovske, Sadove, and part of the city of Kherson, Korabel Island. The authorities are asking people to evacuate. The so-called head of the occupation administration of Kakhovka district, Vladimir Leontiev, initially denied that the dam had been blown up. Then he said that the wells were destroyed as a result of night strikes. Initially, Leontiev claimed that there was no need to evacuate the population. Now the occupation administration says that people will be evacuated from Kakhovka, which is almost completely underwater, from Holopristan and Leshki, which are settlements on the occupied left bank of the Kherson region. This is not the first time that Russians have blown up dams in Ukraine. On August 18, 1941, the Russians used 20 tons of explosives to blow up the Kakhovka Hydroelectric Dam in an attempt to prevent the German offensive. A few months later, in November 1941, they did the same thing, blowing up the dam of the Istra Reservoir, flooding a large part of the Moscow region. Once again, the Russians did not care about civilians. Today it happened to the Kakhovka Hydroelectric Dam amid talk of a Ukrainian counteroffensive. Once again, we have a situation where the Ukrainian armed forces are on the right, high bank of the Dnipro, but the height of the wave is such that part of Kherson was flooded. The following settlements have already been completely or partially flooded: Tahinka, Lvove, Odrado-Kamenka in Bereslav district, Ivanivka, Mikirske, Tokarivka, Ponyativka, Belozerka, and the Kherson district of Ostriv. People from these districts are being evacuated by bus to Kherson, then to Mykolaiv, and from there to Khmelnytsky, Odessa, Kropyvnytsky, and Kyiv. As of 9 p.m., around 1,500 people have been evacuated in Kherson region, the Interior Minister said, and the first evacuation train has already left Kherson's train station for Mykolaiv. According to the Kherson Regional Military Administration, about 16,000 people on the right bank of the Kherson region are in the critical zone. Russian telegram channels publish videos of water flooding the occupied Kakhovka. The hydroelectric power plant itself is actually at the bottom of the river. Only the roof of the plant is visible in the video. There are also videos of animals running away from the high water in the south, and police officer rescuing dogs. People are asked to untie the animals and let them out of their cages. The destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant is a terrorist act on the part of Russia, which is fully responsible for it. The destruction of the hydroelectric power plant threatens an environmental catastrophe for the south of our country, said Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is located on the shores of the Kakhovka Reservoir, which has been occupied by Russians for 1.5 years. Plant is cooled by water from the reservoir. Experts have previously warned that if the water level drops and there is not enough water in the coolant ponds, this will raise the threat of nuclear accident. The destruction of the hydroelectric power plant could have negative consequences for the NPP, but the situation is under control, according to Energoatom. The IAEA has so far said that there is not immediate threat to the NPP after the explosion. The Kakhovka Reservoir is a huge man-made lake, often called the sea. It's the last in the Dnipro reservoir network. Since the 1950s, it has been providing drinking and irrigation water to the southern regions of Ukraine. Now the water in the reservoir is falling rapidly, about 15 cm per hour, according to the authorities of the city of Nikopol, located on the shore of the reservoir. People are asked to make the maximum possible water reserves. Due to the dam explosion, there is a threat that people in the south of Kherson region and in Crimea will be left without drinking water, and some settlements may be destroyed, said Andriy Yermak, head of the presidential office. Kryvyi Rih is already planning to reduce water consumption and production facilities and limit its supply to the population. 70% of the city's water supply depends on the Kakhovka Reservoir. According to Ukrhydroenergo, on the night of June 6, Russians blew up the engine room of the Kakhovka Hydroelectric power plant. It was completely destroyed and cannot be restored. Andriy Yusov, a representative of the DIU, says that there is evidence of the movement of equipment and explosives, and there is evidence that the Russians remotely organized the explosion at the hydroelectric power plant. The occupation authorities in Nova Kakhovka claim that the Ukrainians hit the dam with the Vilha MLRS, but there is a nuance. Since this dam was built in Soviet times, it was designed to withstand missile attacks. The same Antonovsky Bridge near Kherson withstood all possible missile attacks by the Ukrainian army, until it was destroyed by the Russians after they left the city. The major record on the footage indicates that the explosion was carried out by planting large amounts of powerful explosives inside the hydroelectric power plant.